Hello. 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 How is it going? Oh, Sergey. How are you, Sergey? It's been a long time. How does it work? So you are streaming your screen. Nice. Hello, Camilla.
Hello, David.
I heard you your laptop is in a hotel or something.
Yes, I left it at the resort, which is on an island just off the coast of Tanzania. So I won't be able to present today.
Okay. We need to arrange a second, maybe like final presentation, part 2, something like that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah. Hello, Leyland.
Hello, David.
How are you?
Hello.
How's Tower C? Do you need to work over the weekend?
No. It's not that busy.
Nice. I have some, like, just a very short clip to show you about the exhibition space that we were talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, just so that we all have the same idea about.
I got to do it already. I can also show you like at the end of the presentation later.
Yeah,
Great.
I think it's better that we show so people understand what we mean by virtual exhibition. I think when I talked to some of the tutors, they were not all clear, like what do we mean. And I also pulled out our office exhibition in Shanghai. I think I showed it before, but I just wanted to show again, like, the kind of VR spaces or virtual tour, but we are doing something different. It's a step further so that we can allow social interaction within that virtual space. And of course, we need the tutors to help us with coordination, because I understand, like, sometimes the student got busy with other tasks and then they don't even bother to reply our emails, and that's where we need the tutors to help as well.
Yep.
Yeah. I hope True will turn up today. Hello. Dua? Is that how we pronounce your name?
Yeah.
How is it going? Thanks for joining us.
Everything's good.
Nice.
Thank you. How are you? I hope you're good.
Yeah, we are good. We are good. Yeah, it's nice that you join us. I think it's really better for you to, like, just look at the projects and then you get a better sense, like different what different studios are developing with the students, what they have achieved in the, like the last 8 weeks.
Yes, it's actually something good. I'm actually an architecture student in 5th year, so I think this will help me to get more insights on how I can present the graduation project in the final stage and in the final panel crit discussion. So I think will be a very good experience for me.
Oh, that's great. Nice. You can learn something from the, the presenters today, like how they talk about the projects in 10 minutes. I suppose you only have 10 minutes to talk about your graduation projects as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just wait a bit. I think people will come in anytime. Hello, guys. Hello, Ivan. Hello, Ives.
Hi, David.
Hello. Let's check. Let's check with Sergey. Hello, Sergey. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Hello. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
How's your project? You will be the first presenter.
Yeah, and I'm ready, and I'm ready to present. I think that I'm in real progress with my project.
Nice. So you're ready. I think, do you mind if we wait for 5 more minutes for more people to join us? And then...
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Duha.
Hello.
Hello. How are you? You ready for the final presentation?
Yes. Wait, am I the first one?
You are the second.
Yes. But yeah, second. I think I'm ready.
Nice. Let's see. I will stop sharing and then Sergey, you can get ready. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for this chance to present project. Could we start or no?
Let's wait. Let's just wait a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Okay. I think we should start.
Okay. So the topic was urban elixir, and my idea is about architectural challenges for Moscow urban area, and in which improvements we should implement for maybe to do architectural development not only more sustainable, but sustainable for new informational challenges, such as not only the idea of green city, but the idea of information transformation. So the great idea for me is to combine two concepts in my project. The social concept is about Web 3.0 concept, and the first concept is about the green city concept, is a sustainable city concept, is a ordinary idea, and I think that in near future, if we would have the statement as some implementations for urban area, for the center for the city, with pedestrian walkways, with green areas, with zero emissions paradigm and other implementation, we really would have real green city in near future. But I think that in balance of this, we would have the garbage city in villages or in suburbia. Their idea that our villages are clear because they are surrounded with naturals and with wilds, and that is not so important for implementation because we have a problem of industrialized cities, but not a problem with naturalistic villages in suburbia. But I think that we would have the controversial situation when we have the green city as a city center. We would have a garbage city because the city need to transport a lot of waste garbages for the suburbia, for the villages, and in the situation of Moscow, we would have the great circle of the garbages, and we would have the good sustainable city as a Moscow and the great garbage circular. And the urbanistic and architectural idea is to find new correlation between garbage circle and between New Moscow area according to railroad transportation system. When we have the stations in railway station in the center of city of Moscow and some stations, travel stations in surrounding the Moscow, we would have the system of recycling garbage, and we would have the system how to not only recycle but to refunctionalize wasted resources for the new buildings, for example. So that is urbanistic ideas. But the second idea is the idea for searching the ways of new social paradigm in this time. And I think that we would have, and we today live in the era of bloggers, of YouTubers, with social networks. So we would live in the paradigm of Web 3.0, where we would have content, with thinking content, or maybe with some cyborgs, maybe. So that the green city and the ideal city is not for real habitats and for real citizens as of today, but I think that the real green city would be beneficial for some bloggers or for some peoples of new era of new century. But their traditional conservative humans and citizens would live in villages and would and not live in this central city. And I think that we would have the central city, the green city, the city of happiness, and I present it as a capsule of this, because it is a capsule city, the happiness city, this engineering systems and sun arrays for every day of the years. And we have some surrounded cities, when we have some farms or some fabrics for traditional cities. And between these cities, we would have some maybe pilot stations for some sources from first and from second world to combine maybe some conflicts and to find new ideas of social living. That is a social concept, and as a result, I would to combine the social concept and the urbanistic concepts. And if we would have about the green city, I think that is a good idea because, as you know, there are a lot of chroma key screens for bloggers are green too. And maybe that the good idea for city is for implementation, for innovation, of course, transform some transport stations to find more ways for recycling. When we do this in one of the railway stations in the center of Moscow. But the second idea is to find some maybe zones or maybe some new scheme with chroma key. And so the green city is not a green city of zero to emission or sustainable city, but the green city is a city of chroma key, the screens of chroma key in which we would to project what we want. So that is not controversial, but to combine the ideas of green cities as recycled, wasted ideas, and the facades as the chroma keys for projecting hybrid situation in AR or in VR, some situation in imaginable world or in metaverse maybe. And that is maybe urban concept in small scale. And for the implementation, that is idealization of my implementation. That is the sphere of chroma key screens, which consist of frames, of course, and which consist of some ways of storages or some system of transportation, and the screens for chroma key, and that is a circle, a real situation, and every citizen can imagine the world what he would live or in which city he would live. That is an abstract idea of integration, and that is architectural development is I think that the idea of some frames from small domes, and then they are open for like a star with the centers, and then there are some slots, domes like umbrella there from small sphere would to open for the star and would open for the zones, for the screens, the chroma key. So that is a real construction with maybe algorithmics opens for some situations which can create a new skin of city. For not, and I find three ways how it might be implemented, but it not be at this presentation, maybe for my visualization in another step. But I think that for the green city and for the center of the city, it would be the skin of the facades as how I presented through the some skins of buildings. But for suburbia, I think that is maybe some conglomerate of the real buildings and the real city, which living in these conglomerates, and some hybrid situation when we have maybe algorithmic design with this model in time with some of situations which open or closed, and to find a lot of function zones in this construction for habitats, for the bloggers and for the traditional citizens too. This is a short summary of this project. That is difficult for me to find a lot of ideas of social connotation, of urban connotation, of architectural connotation, and it is a great challenge for me in this workshop. And I present this idea, but of course I want to continue this idea for architectural visualization, for some to find ways how to implement it in real architecture. But in this step, I think that is all about maybe workshop. But maybe not. But I think that I close all the questions and issues. So thank you for the attention. This is the finish of my presentations.
Thank you. Let me try to understand the project. So I'll try to recall. I think you make a comment on the existing relationship between the city and the surrounding villages, and then like the city, like producing the garbage or the rubbish, and then ship it out to the suburbs, the villages. So is that the main issue you have identified, and then you try to propose a new urban idea to organize this relationship?
Yeah, first of all, I really think that this is a good idea for sustainable, for the green city, and that is a real situation for maybe all mega policies of the world, and that is a real situation in 2050 maybe. But I think that is only one part of true when we talk about urban idea and we talk about a recycling system from the central city to the villages, and maybe some traditional connections when the villages produce food and then to transport to the city may be changed, because the green city might produce a lot of foods and maybe to transport it to the villages, but the city produce some waste of buildings, waste of environments, and then recycling in centers, in railway station, and then to transport for villages and for city recycled materials for doing, for example, this construction from new materials. But I think that is vital yet to think about social sphere, and I think that we wouldn't live in a world of traditional workers and traditional maybe ideas, jobs. We would live in bloggers area, we would live in metaverses, we would live in some of hybrid situation. And because of it, this not only waste of traditional materials, that is the waste situation of thinking, that is the waste situation of idea, and what new idea might be recycled from. And because of it, I think about in Green City, in City of Center, we have a bloggers area, for example, and in the villages, we have traditional areas, and how they wasted ideas can connect it through the idea of Green City and through this transportation idea. And because of this, I have some social, maybe abstract idea, and then architectural idea through the transportation and recycled system at centers, and some technological improvements.
I'm kind of interested in this, like the Moscow city and the urban idea. Was it like a product of the wO2, or you see like this kind of organization or the relationship between the city and the suburbs are kind of like universal? This arrangement or this problem that you identify, you also see in other cities, say like London, New York, or Shanghai. Do you see it like as a universal issue or uniquely to Moscow?
I think that it's not unique situation, but I think that the Russian ideas have some dystopian, anti-utopia situation when we have some provisional thinkings or spoiled thinkings and great technological intervention. And this satiric situation, this dystopian situation, it might be represented through these media areas and through these projects. I think that not this dystopia when we have blogger city and other humans in suburbia, in the villages, or only green city, because that is a vitrine, or that is a symbol to do city is green, because the Moscow want to be the global city, but another country and another Russia, wasted country, strongly industrial country, but only Moscow have this symbolic ideas. And for this situation, I think that is, of course, for Russia, because the Moscow have 20 million citizens, and not hegemon of countries, and not ordinary situation like another cities in Russia. But for New York, or for London, for Tokyo, for Shanghai, I think the situation when we have new cities for bloggers, new cities for thinkings, and how to rethink this idea through the open ideas, I think that is a good challenge for other global cities. But not in this contrast, like in Russia, wasted country and shiny green Moscow, wasted thinking in villages, in traditional jobs, and only bloggers for Moscow. So not in this contrast, but I think that is this idea too.
I think I begin to understand a bit more. I think I see it, or I see relevance to Beijing's planning. Right? I think it used to have all the heavy steel plants in the capital, and then a lot of this planning, like affecting the air, water, land and things like that. But like now with the new idea of making it a political and cultural center, a lot of these non-capital programs are moving out of the city to elsewhere. And then like in some very recent changes, I think a lot of the nation or state-owned companies or headquarters are moving out of the capital. And then like this, like mega-sized companies will be relocated to other provinces. And then there will be the engine for new economic growth.
Yeah.
Feel free to jump in.
Hi, Sergey.
Hi, Ivan.
I think the drawing is actually really coming along, and I think you've got some of the really nice graphics to sort of represent your project as well. I actually also really like the kind of master plan that you have, the one with this one. I like this kind of the idea of network. It almost feels like, you know, those are the arteries that link up your city to the suburb. Whereas your circle is almost like, if you look at London or any other cities, there's this concept of green belt, where it actually stops the urban center from expanding too much. And in a way, I think that concept also applies to, you know, your project as well. You know, how you actually use this sort of new urban centers to sort of prevent the existing one from expanding too much, whilst you actually injecting a new, you know, recycling urbanism to your city. So I think your project actually does two things, you know, actually protecting the existing one while also expanding the new one. But I do have questions about, so all those new structure that you have, for example, like if you go back to the previous page that you were showing. Yeah, for example, this one, I think it looks really interesting, but I have a question about the scales, like how big is this, and how do you sort of imagine? So it's just like really pragmatic questions, like how do you actually imagine people or your city to be inhabited inside this structure? Because if you think about like one of this capsule, is it almost like a city scale, or is it almost like a, you know, like one person living pod? So that will actually make such a big difference to your intervention. So I think you have to sort of establish, okay, what scale is this? How big this has to be? And I think it's the same for the next drawing, where you have this modules where you open up and become spaces. I think it's the next one. I really like this image, by the way. I think, yeah, this one. So you were mentioning like how these different modules will sort of open up and deploy. So how big is this? Like if I compare that to like a normal building in Moscow, how big would this be? And so I think it's just a question about the sizes and the dimensions and the scales of this, and how these different modules can be, you know, sort of incorporated into your overall master plan. Because if you look at, for example, like the image on your top right corner, where you have these strips that running across the city, because of the scale, you can imagine one of these strips in reality is going to be huge. Even just the width, you know, it might be about like 20 or 30 meters already. So I think, you know, just have to be really careful and actually establish the actual scale for each of these items, and that will help your project and help the audience understand the sort of the whole extent of the master planning. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, but I think that the drawings looks great. I really like the kind of the detail and also the kind of ambitions of the drawings.
Yeah, and I have some difficult for thinking, for ideas, for social ideas, for technological development. That is a real challenge, this workshop, because traditionally in Russia, I have never think about these architectural ideas. We have only some form constructions, some design forms, and only these ideas, but not about social, not about some.
Yeah.
And because of this, that is difficult for me, but in these years, I want to implement this into three models. In the model of city, when we have some maybe labyrinths of this construction.
How big is this actually? For example, like this thing. How? Yeah.
This frame is not big because this this star is maybe 6 meters in one side and 6 meters in another side. So that is really human size for implement as a scheme, as a maybe construction foldings for the architecture, for the facades. And that is a models for big copies for architectural, for new buildings, or for cities too. And I want to do it in this next step. But this is small size, size 6 meters. And like scaffoldings or construction foldings of buildings.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think what would be really interesting is actually look into so you have this sort of big scale master plan where you look at the whole intervention as a whole, and then it's actually really interesting to see how you basically start to zoom in into different elements. So you also play around the scale. So, from afar, you only see like the lines, like the strips. And then you start to zoom in into, okay, what's actually happening within one of the strips. And then you can zoom in even more, to one of these modules, one of these elements. And I think because you talk quite a lot about the recycling and I think in the beginning, you also mentioned, the protagonists will actually be, instead of the elite in the cities, they will be the nobody in the city. So they become the hero in your project. And you can actually start to think about, okay, how they actually will come together to make this piece. So I think it's really interesting to actually see your architecture from like a really sort of big scale down to a really human scale. Can some of these elements actually, almost like a garment, almost like a clothes for them, but, with recycling materials so that actually when they come together, they become part of the architecture itself. If you look at this fashion designer called Lucy Otter, I'll just type in the box. If you look at her design, she has a lot of garments and clothing, which is essentially very architectural. So she actually has, like, for example, like a living pot, which is sort of wearable. So it can be, like moved around and all that. So I think if you actually start to look into the scale, applying different scales to your project, that will make your project much more convincing and really interesting to see as well, because you operate at different level of details. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I think that two drawings on the right hand side, it looks really interesting, but maybe it's just a shame that it's a bit too small. I would love to see them, like even if you bring that up like a bit bigger as well.
I think I really have the urge to see the research traces back to like a certain set of policies, whether it's the what you say, what you talk about, the social ideas or economical ideologies. If we can trace back to a set of policies that really can map out the evolution of Moscow, that will be quite powerful, in my opinion. And then you identify the issues and for the wastes or for the garbage. I also have the urge to see maybe a certain items or like, I don't know, is it plastics? Is it like oil byproducts or any natural gas byproducts? If we can have like a few very tangible items that can kind of like illustrate the situation or the issue that you have identified and look at the impact of this waste from the city to the villages. Yeah, and then like I see like you are kind of like, you know, building on the idea of a new ecological capital, and then you are like proposing these mega structures to achieve that. It's almost like investing in high-speed rail or like transport system to boost the economy. So I get it. I get this mega structure is trying to really make a new arrangement or like redefine the relationships or the products from the city and as well as from the villages. So like when you identify issue on a national level, I'm convinced that you really need to have these like mega structures to initiate that change of status quo. Yeah.
Thank you, yeah.
And yeah, like, yeah, beautiful drawings, but I was just wondering, like, for the master plan, if you go to that page, now the gesture is really clear, right? Because we are like almost like doing lots of circles on the map. Yeah, this is really like powerful as an image. But I'm just wondering, like, would they also have a layer, like a richness, if the lines are not so defined, but more organic? Because but that will be another level of investigation, like, because those things needs to respond to some natural resources. So the contour, is that a river? Is that, like, is that a river running, or is that a mountain, right? I mean, is there a river going through, or is that a mountain, an area that is much higher or a great level change? Then this line will not be like this anymore.
Yeah, I agree, David. I think, like as a concept, I think it's really strong. But
yes,
if you put it if you put it into context, what this circle would become, because surely it won't be just a perfect circle. That will be something that you can actually latch on. Whether it's a landscape, whether it's a boundary, like what is this boundary actually defines this sort of circular boundary that you have. So I think that would be almost like the next stage to look at.
Yeah, I think it's a powerful concept and it makes things easier to understand, but the next level will be an investigation, or perhaps you can even like what I mentioned, like just to identify a specific village that you thought this problem, this issue that you have identified is most prominent and obvious. And then those or perhaps you're already doing that, right? You have identified some landmarks and see like how your system or your infrastructure will bring changes to this landmark, this location in the city.
Thank you.
I think also might worth looking into, for example, like the green belt in London. Like how do they actually define that line? Because if you look at the green belts on maps, they're not like a perfect rectangle or circle anyway. Like the boundary is actually defined by some sort of geography or landscape in the context. So how does that apply to your site? What can be sort of used to determine the boundary of your new master plan?
Yeah, that can be even more powerful, right? Really, like the new concept of proposing a new ecological capital, and then you figure out the infrastructure to kickstart this change. Yeah, so like an entire system or infrastructure for garbage recycle or for this recycling urbanism. That's quite powerful, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like even if you just look at, because I think the edges of this boundary is really interesting. Because how do you actually link your city to the existing one? And even if you just look at the boundary, it can be itself like a 1-year project already. So I think there's a lot of different layers in the project that you can sort of explore into.
That's really true. Like the boundaries and the administrative districts, maybe that line already cuts across different cities and governments. And then how do you coordinate that? That's really like an issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also,
this is Ben, by the way.
Hello.
Hi. I just want to build on top of the comments. Like on this drawing, you could look at the contours of the country and look at large pieces of flatlands and have those follow the kind of flatland contours, because a lot of major cities, they usually start in a town with a lot of flatlands because it was usually easier to build on, and then they expand from there. And maybe you could start with merging this. Are these lines, any of these lines, contour lines on this drawing?
For the scale, for the contours of country, there is no these lines because that is relief and terrain highlight situation. This point is the cities, but not only the cities for 2050, because a lot of cities have died, villages or small towns. So for this European part of Russia, when we have the Moscow, that is the top level corner. We have some St. Petersburg, one city, and here in south we have cities like Sochi or like Volgograd. So that is a real distance, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 kilometers. So that is a real huge scale. But the Moscow is the majority cities which are in a circle of 500 kilometers. There are no such larger cities like Moscow or some effects of this network for this Moscow. So I want to present this idea in this large scale when we have only Moscow in all the European part of Russia, and there are another cities, 1 million citizens. There is no compare with Moscow. The St. Petersburg is not compare with Moscow because it is an only Moscow situation. That is only 20 million 100 people here, and that is a super situation for this.
Cool. I think like based on what you have said, there could be another layer of information on top of this. So I think it's a very good conceptual drawing with information and context overlaid. I think based on what you've said, you have done more research than it's shown on this map, and maybe it could, like adding layers on top could also define the expansion, and it almost looks like the roots of a plant where they grow out from the center, and then when the root breaks or split into another smaller plant, it also keeps on growing like a smaller hub on the side. And yeah, I like this concept of just expanding infrastructure and then connecting them, and then they become nodes. Just think, yeah, you could, this map could benefit from more layers of information. Yeah, and also I agree with what Ivan said. It will be nice to show some human beings or just the size of a human being in some of the images, and that will help people understand how it feels like for being inside of the building. I'm sure you have the skill in mind, but it's a lot easier when you see it in an image. But overall, it's a very good project.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more comment. When you talked about zero emission,
yeah,
and I think that you need to discuss about materials for your infrastructure. But because the construction, as we all know, like construction industry is accountable for 40% of the carbon dioxide emission, right? And if you are building this mega infrastructure to start this waste recycling process in order to create this new ecological capital, then what material are you using? But when we start to talk about materials, then zero carbon emission can be quite challenging.
Yeah.
Is it going to be timber? And then is that economical forest for you to cut down the trees or take the materials from this forest planted 25 years ago, and now it's ready to for timber construction. Because timber is like it embodies the carbon, right? And then when we built it, it's not really adding too much to the carbon emission.
Yeah.
So what's the material that you imagine?
I imagine some plastic materials, some materials from buildings like concrete, steel, and cartoon and paper, and then it's recycled, and some pellets or recycled pellets transported through the transportation system, railroad system, for the city, for the centers of city, and for the villages too. But I think that it's good advice to concretize what of materials, because I think that not all of materials, and if I talked about timber, concrete, or something else, it would be beneficial for this innovation and for some technology, because this is the idea of recycled materials. All of these are recycled, and this is a new scale of city from the waste to the new city.
Recycle materials.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that can be like a hierarchy, right? So if you have, for example, if you have the frame, which can be made in timber, and then your cladding, maybe it's only the cladding that is recyclable. So basically what your inhabitants would do is they will constantly renew the facade from time to time. And so your infrastructure is not as static as it looks, because constantly the facade has to be updated. And so you have to take in more recycled material eventually. So your infrastructure is almost like a worm, like a worm actually eats in or take in the recycled material from the city constantly.
That's a really good idea. Then the next question will be, like, who's your protagonist? Who's going to invest in your infrastructure, and what is the output for them to measure your success? What data do you generate? How do you measure, like, how do you create a set of measurements or matrix to measure the success of your ecological capital? What sort of data? Now we only measure things in carbon dioxide, and then we started to trade carbon tax, this set of systems to support this recycling or this climate change initiatives. But in your system, like, what will be the output? Yeah, that's like a really good idea from Ivan, right? Like, if this is like a change, and this is a system that will eat wastes. Like, if you imagine it like the novel Dune, the worms that eat the sand and generate this spice.
Yeah, I think what might be also quite interesting is actually, so if you like the question of, okay, how do you actually measure how successful your infrastructure will be? Maybe it's not in terms of carbon absorption, but it's actually about, okay, how much paper or how much waste that you can actually recycle within your infrastructure. And if you take that idea onwards, like if your infrastructure actually eats in the recycled material, so surely like your recycled material will actually add to the length of, this infrastructure that you have, adds to the tail. So basically the scale and also the length of your infrastructure becomes almost like a lateral barometer of how much material or how green your city is. So I think that's quite interesting, because in a way the physical component of your architecture becomes almost like a measurement of how successful your architecture is. So the longer that your infrastructure becomes, the more successful it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
There are many dimensions that this project.
I know.
Very good,
yeah.
good discussions. Yeah, like what you say, like the boundaries. That can be a year-long thesis research project.
Yeah,
and then like also like creating a set of convincing measurements that is also like requires you to understand the economics, the politics. Yeah. But it's great. It's great. Any last comments from anyone in this chat.
I think it's a very good project. It covers a lot of scales and also the background from all the it's a year-long project. So it's great to see all the graphics, and they're quite powerful. So very well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I need to congratulate you.
Yes.
Any further further research? Any further engagement with your project, or is it going to just be saved in a hard disk somewhere?
Design animations coming up.
Any ideas to take this further?
Well, I think, Sergey, obviously, like, the project has a lot of dimensions that you can sort of dig deeper into, but it also depends on, I mean, at the end, it's up to you to decide whether, you want to take this forward or not. But I think if you want, like, all our comments, all the sort of different routes, the different strands of development, they're all there waiting for you to discover. So yeah, like, I would be really interested to see, if there's any sort of like further development to this.
Yeah, I think that is a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, most thing that you can go like more like many steps further, and then also like creating your own device to measure or to generate certain data. Like we have satellites looking over the ocean or detecting tsunami or detecting natural wildfire and things like that. And then for you, your investigation or your proposal is on this national level. It definitely require something not any less ambitious than a satellite, like 24/7 observing the changes or things like that, and then you'll be able to create like a new set of graphics, and then also like the new layer of information for any government to basically look after the wastes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think if we have no more comments for this project, we can move on to our second presenter, Duha.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
Hello everyone. So today I will be presenting the project which is called the Plus House under the Dreamtown workshop. So as humans, we long for meaningful relations with those around us, and that's why the Plus House envisions a cross-generational shared living communities, communion in the heart of Dubai that combines private living with shared spaces that enable people to be a part of a vibrant community and enjoy a social lifestyle where they live. And you can achieve that by recognizing the needs of the residents and their different lifestyle, and giving the possibility for the individuals to design their homes according to their living situation, and by using metabolism architecture to continuously adapt the space layout and the structure to meet the needs. The strategies that are being used in this project are metabolism when it comes to the structure and the modularity, Adaptive architecture is present in the interior spaces for separating the spaces according to the needs of the individuals. And kinetic architecture will be present in the facade by having kinetic shading devices. So since this project is located in Dubai, I will just talk a little bit about the lifestyle. So due to the multicultural composition of the country, different lifestyles are adopted, and separated lifestyle can be seen in various local and of a Middle Eastern origin families and individuals as a result of their culture, traditions, and norms. On the other hand, the open lifestyle is also largely seen around the city with a high number of expertise that come from different regions around the world, in which the open lifestyle is applied as the go-to for individuals that are generally from geographically far countries. So this is the site. It's located in Dubai in Medan City. And the name Medan originates from an Arabic term, which is meaning a meeting place, which is it's a place where business opportunities and luxurious lifestyle amenities are blended to form a revolutionary suburb of Dubai. So one of the main reasons why I chose this site was because of the views and because of the location of it, since it's in the center of Dubai, and it's a developing area as well. So you can see here that this is the location of our site. On this side, you will have the view of the skyline, and you will have a direct view to Burj Khalifa. And on this side, you will have the view to the Lagon Lake, Lake. As you can see here, I just added some of the images. That's how it's gonna look like in the upcoming years. And then after that, I started doing creating 2D geometrical tiling to generate a system that can be expandable and flexible, which aims to produce an interesting and interactive spaces, such as courtyards that bring people together. The geometrical tiling is used to generate the shape of the units that can be put together and easily removed and connected without affecting the structure of the building. So I started focusing on pentagons and hexagons. Like for example, the first one that I did was the Cairo Pentagon. In the Cairo Pentagon, the shape of the units works. However, with this type of tiling, you will mostly have a linear expansion. And then I started doing hexagons by just placing simple hexagon grid and then taking some hexagons out to create the courtyards. So to make it more complex, by adding the pentagons and the hexagons together, I managed to come up with this. I managed to come up with this tiling that is made of the units or pentagons are rotated rotated with an angle that will create different sizes of courtyards. Then here you can see the massing where in the high density, this represents the high density where everyone moved in, and they started expanding. And then I started placing also the cores and the expansion areas. But what we're aiming for is the medium density. I think it's more realistic to have to design it for a medium density. And in the low density, it shows how the growth of this community will be like. So as people move, and the circles will start forming, and the courtyards will also start forming. Then I started doing simple zoning. Since we're aiming for medium density, I only made it 3 floors. So in the ground floor, it's almost full. It's almost full. And then you have in the first floor, I started taking some units out, and in the second floor, you will have fewer units. As in this case, the expansion, it will be like a vertical expansion and a vertical growth. Then you'll have different types of unit arrangements and apartments. Like for example, if you cover 2 units, you will be able to have a 1-bedroom apartment or even a very spacious studio. Then by adding another unit, you will be creating a 2-bedroom apartment, and then adding another unit, you'll have a 3-bedroom apartment. And then by taking a space of the expansion space that are going to be used as terrace, and if they're empty, then you will create a 4-bedroom apartment. And then I started doing I did a steel frame structure, and then by using prefabricated walls, I did multiple arrangements of the same wall, since we want to give the individuals the possibility of customizing their own house, and it depends on what they want. So for an example, you have the 5.6 wall, which is going to be placed in the middle area. It can be a full curtain wall, or it can have like a fewer windows. So basically you just prefabricate the wall, and then you would just come and attach it to the steel frame structure. And this will be easier for expanding, or even if you don't want to expand and you want to have a smaller space, then you will just remove the walls out of the steel frame. Here's just a render of how spaces will look like by having the terraces and the expansion areas. And for example, this is a 1-bedroom apartment, but this is a 3-bedroom apartment. So this is how it's gonna look like. Then here in the master plan, you can see that you can see the courtyards, and the courtyards will have different functions. Like for example, it could be like a playground area, or it can be an outdoor gym, or anything that is needed for the community to grow more and more. So here's just another render of how the project will look like. And then lastly, I did the Kinetic shading devices. I got inspired by Al Bahar Tower shading devices. So there are an umbrella-like panels that they open and close in response to the sun movement, protecting the building users from heat and glare, decreasing the needs of air conditioning, and making the building more sustainable. The panels themselves are aesthetically pleasing, and also are inspired by the traditional Islamic shading system, respecting the cultural heritage as well. Another thing, when I started, for the facades and the whole finishes of the project, I got inspired by like the desert, because the first thing that comes into your mind when you talk about like United Arab Emirates or Dubai is the desert. So I wanted to have that culture represented in this project. But at the same time to have it in a modern way, since there's just a lot of buildings that are very modern. So this is kind of like a tribute to the culture and to the country as well. Thank you. Hello?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Duha.
You're welcome.
Any comments from the tutors? David?
Give me a second, I'm digesting. Let me collect my thoughts.
Duha, are you from Dubai yourself, or?
No, I'm not from Dubai. I'm actually from Sudan, but I was born and raised here.
Right. I just have one question. Like, so you talk about like the density in the very beginning. So how does that come through to your final? Like, you know, what's your aspiration for this? Is it, do you want to, so I guess the key premise of the project is that everything's, you know, is sort of customizable, so you can change things. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I think for me it's really interesting because when you talk about changing the density, and also, you know, how you have this sort of different customizable modules. It's not just about, you know, solving housing crisis or housing problems as such, but it's actually it's almost like creating a new kind of lifestyle. And that's why I'm actually wondering, maybe I've missed that, but have you actually looked into, for example, one of the layout of these modules?
Yes. I think I can. I do have it. Like I did create like each one by placing the walls and seeing how it's gonna look like, because it honestly depends on the location of the unit, and also if there is another unit that is connected to it, and there's just so many possibilities when it comes to this project. So even for the density, it's just an assumption, because you really don't know what the people want, and each the people are different from each other. But I did place different walls and to see how it's going to be created. Like for an example, when you have the 5.6, but there is like another unit that is connected to this side, so you will have to use, you won't have any openings. And also for the 6.3, which are placed here, some units may be facing another unit, so you will need to, like, some people would like to have privacy, so that's why there's it basically depends on the person. So because there's so many possibilities when it comes to this project.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's interesting. But I think what I would do is, I know this is sort of the final stage of the project, but I just think, you know, if you want to take this project forward, I would actually look into the project in almost like a more radical way. You know, how do you actually, if you look at the layout of typical housing, you know, you have kitchen, you have bathroom, but, you know, is there any other sort of possible configuration that you can have in the housing? So if you look at, there's this Dutch architect called Anna Perch-Jenner. So she actually traveled around different cities, different countries in the world, and she basically just looked at kitchens, and she sort of did this research on, okay, how people actually use the kitchen, how do they actually cook, and also the kind of culture of dining and cooking together. And she proposed this idea of kitchen as city. So basically she thinks that, okay, what if all the kitchens in the cities, they're not private, but instead, you know, they are all communal. So, you know, all the households, they will actually share a kitchen. So I'm just wondering, you know, I'm not saying, you know, you can, you know, you should get rid of the kitchen or the bathroom or anything like that. But I'm just wondering, you know, is there like a more radical approach that you can actually look into in terms of thinking about, okay, because you're changing the density anyway, but can you also think about, you know, how you can actually change the configuration of the layout of the house? Because essentially, I think you also mentioned how your housing can be sort of developed by the inhabitants themselves. So it almost reminds me of this Alejandro's half house, where they only built the framework of the house, and then all the fabrics, all the partitions, basically they are built by the inhabitants themselves. So I think I think the beauty of this is not just about, okay, creating how, the feasibility. It's not just about the feasibility, but it's also the potential of a new kind of lifestyle within the housing unit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of potential to it. Yeah.
I actually did think about the kitchen because usually families from a Middle Eastern like backgrounds, they would like to have like a closed kitchen. I did think about it. However, because of the timing, I couldn't like produce a lot of stuff. I had an idea where in the kitchen there will be a partition that can be moved and rotated. So whenever they have guests, then the partition will close and then it will be used as a closed kitchen. But when it's just the family, then you can open the partition and then it will be like an extension for the kitchen as like a dining table. But because of the timing and I really wanted to make sure that the frame and everything works together to actually create the circles and all of that. So I kind of focused more in metabolism and the modularity.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, Duha, I think you got all the like ideas of the metabolism, and you accidentally deliver in your project. However, you just need to make the diagrams, make the presenting better. For example, you have this page doesn't make sense, right? You need more like a unit plan in parallel with the types that's for people to customize and actually really define their own like living space, and as a community, like different types of customizable unit putting together is actually very diverse, right? So it's the beauty of this metabolism that you can actually replace, and it's very dynamic by time. So in different family coming, we have a denser community, and less if people go, we have a more open area, more relaxed suburban community, right? So you just need to polish more. If you have more time and you're interested in push this project a little further to make this into your portfolio, I think you can just craft a couple more image and a very nice renderings with the landscapes, and then how you can imagine in like you living in this space, right? Right now I see your rendering is just a blank rendering without any like people, without furniture, without green space, whatever. So if you want to push this further, I see your project has a lot of potential, and if you want to push this further, you can work on these couple more. I think this project is very ambitious, and you've done quite well. To make a very more coherent project, you just need to make more progress on production. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good job. Yep.
Thank you.
I also think, sorry, just one more comment. Like the actual construction of your architecture can be quite interesting to see, because if you look at, for example, like the capsule tower in Tokyo, there's a really strong hierarchy of where the frame is, where the primary structure is, and then all the the housing unit, they're like come in modules. So there's a really strong sense of hierarchy of, whether, which bits of the structure is permanent and which bits you can actually add on to your metabolic structure.
So in this project, the ones that are permanent are which is the core, which is the permanent, the permanent type of structure. And then the frame will be like kind of attached to it. And so this is the primary. I just didn't have much more. If I had more time, then I would like render it more and all of that. I don't understand your point.
Yeah. And then I think another point is also the question of, okay, how big is this frame? Because if you say the whole frame is prefabricated, then what's the dimension of it? So if you look at the capsule tower, all the capsule, the dimensions of it is very much determined by the maximum permissible unit that you can actually transport in the urban areas in Tokyo. So I think when you deal with construction like this, there might be more information you can actually draw from the existing city. So like how big the truck is for you, to allow you to actually carry that to the site. So all this information that can actually feed back to your architecture itself to make it like even stronger and more richer as well. Yeah.
I just want to add. Sorry, go ahead.
I just like made sure when it comes to the sizes, I made sure that like the wall will not like extend up to like 7 or 8 meters, because I remember we did a project in university where we had to use prefabricated walls, and we had to submit this project to a company called KEF, which is here in Dubai. So I still remember like the regulations of it, that like the maximum walls that we could do was like up to 6 or 7 meters. So I made sure that like the maximum wall that can be placed is like 6.3. I tried to like make it 6. However, it's because they're diagonals. So that's why I just wanted to add that. But go ahead.
I think we should definitely take this further. And in terms of the illustration, just those very fundamentals, like you should have human scale. You should frame the beautiful moments in your community, like how you imagine the families move in this new architecture, or like what kind of life they will like likely to you envision for them. I think the fundamentals for one, and then for the structure that you are showing here. And then also like the material, you seem to be suggesting timber. And then I want to know what kind of timber are you using? Are you using cross-laminated timber to build this wall? Like this is like one whole wall. And then what's the material limitation, like what you discussed with Ivan just now? And then for what is the largest single wall that you can go with, say, cross-laminated timber?
It's not actually. It's not actually timber. It's a concrete, but as blocks. I think here it kind of looks like timber, but you can't use wood here. We don't. Usually use concrete here.
Okay. Yeah. Then concrete. Then what's the you are applying a different finish to it, right?
Yes.
Maybe that could be something. I'm not reading your interests correctly, so I'm just like giving out very general comments that maybe you can take it further. But like for example, like the finishes, we can also talk about it, right? And then like for the dimension here, and then for the logo or the diagram that you have on the upper right corner, what's the dimension of that? Maybe.
Which one?
That would be useful as well, like the one.
Frame.
Yeah.
This?
Yeah, what's the dimension? Things like that can be quite helpful for the audience, or for us to quickly understand that. And then can we also go to the renders where you show the terrace, like the space? Oh, yeah, this image. To be honest, I think what we have here, like this space, is not very, to use a simple word, it's not a very happy space, it looks like.
Yeah, you need to add trees and like, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, things like that to really capture a beautiful moment in this community, or maybe how they interact. And the next one, where you have the facade, I think that was quite detailed, like quite nice.
Yeah. This one? Yeah, I actually did it in Grasshopper and it moves, but I just I didn't know how to kind of show the movement here. So this took a long time for me to like do it in Grasshopper and like the dimensions and making sure it moves.
It's great that you pick up a new skill, right? If you can animate that and then you present it with the sun movement or sun shading studies, then that can be a very like immediate animation to show what you mean and what kind of activities can correspond to this facade movement. I think that also can be something that you investigate further. And then maybe the last few comments that I want to discuss with you would be the methodology. Like you, from the earlier studies, you spent some time to do the geometric tiling, right? I think that's quite productive because from that scale, sort of like scaleless geometry tiling studies, and then to arrive at this point where you can guide the positioning of the different units. But that translation is from 2D to 3D, and then that extrusion or the decision that you make is really according to the density studies that you conducted. So I was wondering, do you think would it be even more productive if you just started with the 3D geometry tiling studies instead of the 2D, where you still require a level of translation? There's no right or wrong. It's really just a discussion about like the challenges or the difficulties that you encounter in your design process. And perhaps you can see a different way of approaching a project like this in your next projects.
I think like you still need the 2D so you can understand like when it comes to the sizes. Like there's some like I can do a lot of 3D geometrical tilings, but the problem is maybe it won't work. So by having the 2D, you kind of can see the plan, or like you can imagine like, oh, I'm gonna put this one here, or I'm gonna put this one here, and then converting it to 3D to kind of see how the shape will look like. So I do think 2D it is important. So because geometrical tiling can actually be really complicated. Like you need to take some stuff out and bringing some stuff so you can actually have and like a clear vision of how it's gonna look like. So and like how the tiling can be transferred into like a residential building or something like that. So I think both of them are important.
So I see. Like, for example, like the capsule hotel, that the site is more defined, right? That the size of the site is an urban scale where there isn't too much of this kind of 2D or like expansion that you can look into, but perhaps we really need to go 3-dimensionally to look at how the capsule can come together in a more interesting composition. And then for this, yeah, you can do this. I was just wondering, like, do you think when you were working on this project or this geometric tiling, would it be beneficial for you to already have the site conditions, like providing some limitations to your exploration? Would that be would it be helpful, or do you think that you really need this kind of abstraction, like where you can really like freely explore the different patterns?
In the beginning it was confusing because I can literally choose any site and it can be empty, so then I can explore all of the possibilities of like having the geometrical tilings. However, if you have a limited size, I think that would kind of open more doors into kind of thinking of how can I make this work. So although it limits you, but I think it would also produce it will produce something that is going to be that kind of needs to work because you have this limited side, the limited side. So for example, in my case, I had the freedom to just expand, and just go all in because the site is empty. However, like for example, I can only expand on these two, like in the x-axis, but if I expand on the y-axis, then it will be entering the water. So this was kind of like a limitation for me. But having a defined a defined site will make things kind of easier because you kind of have it will kind of make it easier in the beginning.
Okay. So that may be something that you can try a different design process in your next project.
I think David, your question about the 2D and 3D, I think that's actually opens up to many more possibilities. So for example, even if you look at your geometry, like this page, because what I see is not just about the density, but in a way like how you sort of configure your housing unit. That's much more than just density. So if you look at, for example, like the traditional tulao in China, David, you might know, like those circular defensive housing. So those housing units, they're all about communities and protection. So I think in a way, the geometry that you developed, that might be sort of like a possibility that opens up to, okay, how do you create like a courtyard for community inside these, circles or, hexagon that you created. And the other question I want to ask is also the sites that you pick, because I know it's in Dubai, but I think at the moment it's not very site specific. Like, you can almost put this into, other conditions. But the fact that it is in Dubai, like, for example, like, is there any sort of sandstorm in Dubai? So how this housing unit, reacts to that? Can it almost becomes almost like a defensive structure towards that? So I think if you actually, I know you sort of, you have a very limited time frame to develop a project, but I think all these different things that will actually enrich your project in a much, deeper sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think what you can also bring in your previous knowledge. Like you mentioned that you work on a project that included some prefabrication wall. Like any details, any connection details, any joint details that you have learned from your previous project that you think you can make an innovation here for this housing project. I think you can also build it up, like create more layers to your project here. And then can we go to the facade? Can we maybe have a discussion about the facade? Yeah. So like here you imagine. So for this different unit, so for this elevation, there will be like one bedroom apartments and maybe like 3-bedroom apartments. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I forgot if you mentioned like this kind of facade is only for the kitchen, or is it for all the different programs? So this is more like the elevation driven facade, or is more like program driven facade?
Actually, I didn't think about it. But can you just repeat what you said?
I think like what's the program here? Is that
for the facade?
Like looks like honestly, the not getting. Sorry?
It also comes like to the kind of the placement of like the location of the unit, because some units will be shaded automatically because of here you have these when you have this unit, it automatically kind of provides shading. But some of them, like for example, if someone wants to have all of their walls to be curtain walls, then in that case you need to kind of add shading devices. So in this space, it can in the one bedroom apartment, it's actually empty, as you can see it here. But in the 2-bedroom apartment, this will actually be the kitchen, but like the kitchen and the dining room.
So I was thinking, for that, let's say this is the thermal mass. This wall will absorb the heat, and would there be any events or activities that you imagine that this wall can actually like open up? I don't know, maybe like we just like move it to this way, and then you allow the different activities or views at different hours. Do you remember one of the reference that you found? I think the house was in Iran, where those boxes can rotate and open up the terrace.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think I have a lot of ideas, but like the scale of this project is there's like so many ideas that you can implement when it comes to this project.
Yeah.
So I do remember it, but I kind of dropped it because the rotation of the units was not working. I needed to make sure that that's working, because if that does not work, then you like anything else that will be adding to it, it won't work as well. So I do remember it. I have so many ideas, and I have the drawings for it. However, like I didn't have the time to render it, or yeah.
That's okay. Like you can just find the idea that you really want to experiment, you want to try, you want to see how that will be interesting to develop. Like if you can really find your thing, your design there, like something that belongs to you, that can be very, very productive for your career, I imagine. It's better than like you have no idea what to do next. Yeah, so I mean, like you say, there are a lot of possibility for this, right? But I just kind of want you to discuss like how you intend to do this. Do you like do this facade to say, oh, you only apply this to bedroom, you only apply it to a kitchen or things like that? Like what your earlier discussion with Ivan, if that is your interest, like looking at kitchen specific, that can be a radical approach to doing a apartment project, and then you look at all elements of making the communal spaces work. So like the kitchen is the new communal spaces where all the family activities are happening around this space at different hours. Then you can really do very specific drawings to show like what happens during breakfast, lunch, dinner, things like that, or any afternoon tea activities. and your facade needs to enable or make those spaces pleasant for the related activities. And you don't even need to worry about other spaces. I mean, this will be quite productive if I just focus on one particular program.
Yeah, I think in this, because it's located in UAE and there's like kind of the issue of the kitchen, so I can only focus on the kitchen and like add more stuff to it and develop it more. So I do agree with that.
Yeah. And then what you can do, you definitely do this kind of studies, right, to look at the overall. But I mean, it will also be really good if you can go in the space and show us the space quality of standing behind the facade.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, you can really, if this is your interest, like you agree with the things you discussed with Leyland and Ivan, then I think you can really focus in doing that and only that. And you can do it like on and off in your own time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I actually also think the site's very interesting because I actually went to Dubai earlier last year, and the city is just crazy to me. Like, you know, you have this strip of really high-end buildings, you know, where you have all the hotels, the Burj Khalifa and all that. But if you go a bit further to like not the suburb, but towards the seaside, like the beach, and then the whole cityscape change a lot, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think like this kind of juxtaposition between one side of the city to the sort of luxury side of the city is quite interesting. And you also mentioned in the beginning how this side, you know, you enjoy a view towards the Burj Khalifa and all those different, you know, luxurious buildings. I think that's kind of interesting because in a way, like if I take this project sort of to the next level, you know, beyond the sort of technicality, but to think about like the social aspect, you know, who is this housings for? You know, are they for the local residents or are they for the tourists? So I think that's almost like a different kind of conversation that can be sort of inject into your project. But anyway, you know, that's for further development anyway. So
yeah, I think that will really build up the narrative, and then the project will be building upon a narrative, like the social dimensions, to make people understand why you are investigating a project like this, and then maybe just like a follow-up discussion about construction. Since you have already highlighted about the prefab, and then you have some previous knowledge about the process going behind the prefabrication concrete. Mm-hmm. Would it be interesting for you to look at how the prefabrication concrete can merge with your facade design? I imagine that this facade will also be prefab, right? It will be manufactured in a factory somewhere.
Yeah, it can be prefabricated here.
Yeah, so maybe there can be an investigation for you to really understand, like you merge the two, merge the prefabrication concrete with your facade, and then also like the structural steel frame that you propose.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe like
I'll try to contact the company to see, or contact one of my doctors to see if he can kind of like guide me when it comes to this. Because we already did it, but it was like before 3 years or something like that. So I don't remember a lot of stuff, and I'll see if they have any like documents that they can share it with me.
Yeah, that's definitely like how you can generate new knowledge. If you agree, you can merge these three elements, and then you can like go deeper into this construction knowledge, and then you also like gain some new insights about this. And then, yeah, if you still have the energy
Yeah.
I'll definitely encourage you to, to
just
not forget
feel it.
about
Not still a one-to-one model.
I think having said that, I think also because if you want to go down this really like technical route, I think the sewage might be quite interesting to look at as well. Because I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, like the Burj Khalifa, like the tallest building in the world, but they don't really have, they're not connected to the main sewage system in the city.
I'm not sure.
Yes, every day they have like a truck to carry all the waste, the shit from the building.
Yeah, one thing that I know is that so like in Dubai is like when it comes to the sewage, it's really developed, but you can have like other Emirates. If you know the Emirate Sharjah, I don't know if you visited it or not. But they also have the same problem. So like the trucks will come at night, and then like if you go at like 2 a.m. or like 3 a.m., you can see like a line of trucks.
Yeah, there you go. I think also, I think that's really interesting because in a way it's very kind of first specific to Dubai as well as a city structure. So I don't know, like, if you want to really go down to this really, really technical route, maybe that's something you can look into as well. So you make the project really sort of believable and convincing.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. I mean, like even what you do, it's only like conceptual structure, conceptual construction ideas, right? Because we are architects, we still need to work with facade consultants or like these prefabrication factories to make certain things work. But what you are proposing is an idea. And I think this kind of ideas can already give you another layer of information. You can make the drawings or the renders much better. Now I think we are lacking information, right? We are lacking the structure. We are lacking the build up of the facade. It's not going to be like a paper thin layer, right? There will be other elements to hold it up to make it work. And if we have those like conceptual ideas, then we can already create something that is convincing enough to start the discussion with your previous professor or the factories, right? We can already like get more feedback from them and then you put it in. And I was saying that you really shouldn't forget about the narrative or the social aspect or like your initial observation about the like this thing. I don't know if this is the right way to say, but this gender, this difference, right, in the household when someone comes to a friend comes to your apartments and then maybe like the ladies will have to excuse themselves and move to another room and things like that. I think that kind of narrative or observation about the culture of the society is something that will give meaning to why you're employing some new technology to propose a new way of living.
Yeah, usually they would have like 2 living rooms. So like the one for men, it's called Majlis, and the other one is just like a family living room where the females will be in. So like solving this would be because the apartments here are tight. So locals and all of these people like from Middle Eastern backgrounds that they want to have that like concept of having 2 living rooms will end up living in villas or townhouses. But some of them actually do prefer to live in apartments. So I think this will kind of like provide another solution for them. And so like the expansion place can be also used as like a majlis or like an extra living room.
Yeah, I think I really want to say like you shouldn't forget about that. I think that's something you highlighted in the midterm and something that you should really keep it in your presentation and for further investigation. Like everything is building up from that observation. Very simple, but I mean like technology can definitely provide more options, right? That is the culture. I take the culture as a reality and not really making any any comments on that, but more like seeing how architecture can help or provide a different option. Really, it's really about providing options, in my opinion. Yeah, so I think that then we can really like with that intact, like with that in your presentation, and we can go like doing these technical things. It's not really to do these technical studies for the sake of doing the technical studies, but it's really like going deeper into how you can implement the idea.
Yeah.
I also have a few comments. I think what all the tutors said is it's great feedback, because I think the project is going in a good direction, and like you said, there's a lot of parts that you need to start producing, and I think you have the good idea to move forward from here. And I think it will be nice to show the study you did before, where the people that live there, their background, their career, their gender, country, where they're from, and maybe their personality or living styles that they prefer. And then you can have an infographics data to show the percentage mix of the people there, and you could then use it as a strategy to plan different room configurations. And then you could look at them as in almost like mini clusters. So where certain areas, they're more suited for people that enjoy more gardens, or people enjoy pubs and different sort of cultural living. And one of the project examples that I just sent into the group is the Singapore vertical tower, the hexagon one. I'm sure you've seen it before. So if you click on the image on the second link, you can see it's also coming in as in hexagonal configurations from the top view, but in between the mini blocks, I'm sure your project will have more modulation than this, but between the blocks, they will have pockets of communal spaces and parks, and sometimes there's swimming pools. And I think your data of what sort of people live there would inform what to put in between these mini pockets. And then that's another thing you can work on is making a catalog for these modules. So I think at the moment the modules here, they're quite big relative to the size of the dwellings, and I think they might be the same size as the reference you were looking at, but it's for a more office or commercial building, and this one is more residential. So I would find out how small can these components go, and try to figure out something that would look nice on the kind of facade panel, because at the moment, if you start thinking in a person's size, if you split the whole wall into 4, like what you did in the earlier slide, you get the modules. In each panel, there's only eight of them, 9 panels. And I think if you have smaller facade panels, so David sketch on top of the screen. So if they're a lot smaller, they will look even nicer. I think. So it's that's actually to explore, and also doing a bit more research on that. And also, if you look at the reference projects, there's junctions between the wall and roofs. Right now, that could be that could benefit from another another layer of detail that would make the project more pretty. So if you go back to that image before, so the one hexagonal, well, yeah, this one, well, yeah. So I think normally when you have aerial views, there should be something going on the roof and not completely flat. There must be at least, even if it's pure reinforced concrete, there should be at least an upstand, and then there could be another layer of materials that drain the water on top of the roof. And there could be solar panels, there could be green roof gardens where people interact with each other. Yeah, but I think the overall project is going in a good direction, and I think you are very clear on what you want to do next, and it's good to explore new software like Grasshopper. So I think it's it's time for building the next level of detail on this project. So
just one last comment. I think your studies about the starlight panels can also transform this windows. Now the mullions are like, just typical mullions. I think because of your studies on the facade panels, this can be transformed with your system. Yeah.
It can.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be like this. And then you can fill up, like some of them can be glass panels and then some of them will be concrete. So perhaps this line will not be defined like that. This line is not like this. This line will be more, depending on your pattern, right, will be more star-like or something. I'm just quickly sketch, maybe like say that's like solid panels, and then this will be the transparent area. Once you have the system, you can like play around with that. And then within your system, there will be 3 materials for the facade. One is the glass, the other one will be prefabrication concrete, and then the last one will be the panels that you use.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that can take away these vertical mullions, and then that can also provide a different look to the facade.
Yeah, it will look more interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And it will kind of like fit with the units and all of that.
And then you are making the best use of your facade studies. It's not only for, so you get what I mean. Okay.
Yep.
Leyland, maybe any last comments? Any last thing that you want to discuss?
Yeah, thank you for all the tutors' comments. I think the first student, this is my first student, and she's doing well, and she's understanding things very nicely, and she need a little more push. So I think that this project we have more chance to push it a bit forward and to deliver more. However, I think Duha is quite busy, and it's quite hard to understand, and it's quite hard to make her to understand this whole concept with all the metabolism and all the flexibility of the housing. So I think overall she's doing well, and I would give her a little more time to even further polish this project. Yeah. Yep. Good job. Duha, do you want to push forward? I can I can make more classes for you. That's okay for me. It's,
yeah, sure.
You don't have to pay. It's free. I just want you to put a little more effort on this project and achieve more. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one last project. Are you ready, Asifa?
Yes, hi.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
No problem. Are you able to view the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
Right. So I was in the workshop called Prototyping Spatial Negotiations. And my entire research was more on a feasibility report on how interventions can work in an area in Karachi which is prone to rising sea levels, but at the same time, monsoon occurs where water level rises and it sort of overflows into the streets and the residential areas. So this is the existing site pictures where there's an existing strip of an entire water channel, which is right now filled with sewage water. And there are mixed buildings across the entire strip where the brown strip is the water channel, and there are multiple residential typologies and commercial buildings along parallel to the entire strip. These are sort of the sectional elevational studies. This is a picture of the monsoon that occurred in 2019. This is the area where the entire water channel exists. But as you can see, the water sort of not only because of the monsoon, all the streets got flooded. And the water channel also got full to the point that it sort of overflowed into the streets and into the buildings. This is then the study of the changing conditions in terms of what happens when the sea level rises. So this is when the sea level rises on 1 meter. This is when it rises in 2 meters, and then 5 meters, and how much of the land can go below sea level by 2030. So these are then sectional studies of different points on the entire water channel, where 1 meter of sea level and a little under it 0.9 level of monsoon that occurred in 2019 is something that's analyzed within these. So in order to propose interventions and spatial negotiation activities or design proposals, I sort of identified 2 types of flooding that happen. One is temporal and one is permanent. The temporal flooding is because of the monsoon, and the permanent flooding might happen when the sea level rises. So this is how the existing condition gets affected with monsoon rains. So this is how the situation changes, where the water starts overflowing and starts getting collected on the roads and the street level. This is the permanent flooding. This is a speculation of what will happen if the condition remains how it is right now and the sea level rises. So this is a representation of that. This is then identifying the different types of interventions that can happen within the entire strip of the water channel. So there are two types of interventions that I have identified. One is through landscape interventions and the other is through housing typology. So separating the two, it was easier to sort of find interventions that can help adapt to the changing situations. So when it came to landscape, there were different interventions in terms of how the hard boundary was one that can be identified, where the water is sort of kept separate than the land, but at the same time, it doesn't allow public interaction with the waterscape. However, soft boundary and different types of soft boundaries were sort of explored, in which interaction with the landscape and at the same time waterscape remained intact if a softer boundary was introduced. So this was further exploring how soft boundary can sort of allow the land to remain interactable, but at the same time, the public can also sort of interact with the water, even if the water level rises. This is then looking into how the housing intervention can sort of be looked at. These would so initially an entire mass of volume was explored, separating the structure and how different floor plates can sort of work towards creating a flexible structure, where the floor plates can be something that are permanent, yet the ground floor can be flexible with a double height space. At the same time, the circulation is something that can be flexible enough for it to allow for vertical streetscape to be formed later on, and creating access to the roof, which then acts as a floor that gets added as a commercial activity. And it's a plug and play system, so where floor plates and structure is something that's permanent, but the volumes and the way these floor plates are used in terms of 25%, 50%, or entirely 100% is something that can be a plug and play system that can happen in terms of modular volumes. This is then a comparative between how existing condition is and how a proposed condition can sort of create interactions, but at the same time keep the private and the public spaces accessible throughout the changes that are happening with temporary and permanent flooding. So these are the interventions that are sort of proposed in terms of the building. The water collection units are introduced, so rainwater can be collected within the private property, whereas landscape sort of creates a buffer between the water channel so it doesn't overflow into the streets. This is how the proposed interventions start getting activated as monsoon starts, where water channel where the water channel starts accumulating more water, but at the same time, the water that is collected within the housing and private properties are sort of collected in an underground rainwater tank. So these are just some zoom ins of how the spaces get interacted and activated. Then as the water level keeps rising, the landscape remains accessible, but at the same time, the underground rainwater tank starts accumulating more water. If the monsoon continues to a point where access is disconnected between the landscape intervention and the private property, and sky bridge or a flexible, a temporary overhead pedestrian bridge along with monsoon emergency barriers can be placed where it stops the water from overflowing into the private properties. Looking at it in a larger scheme, interventions were sort of introduced which work for temporary conditions, but at the same time, are added at this point to allow for easier changes and adaptability for permanent changes when sea level rises. So this is the landscape intervention as discussed earlier. At the same time, streetscapes such as street poles are sort of create a foundation for creating skywalks and elevated roads later on. But at the same time, the flexible staircase, vertical circulation is more like a pier where different levels allow for accessibility should the water level start rising at different levels. This is a change in the condition as to how monsoon can sort of be tackled once with introduction of emergency monsoon barriers. And if the sea level rises, how can that be tackled with elevated walkways and sky bridges? This is some more detailed studies of how housing typology can work, where interventions and studies and research was done into how a floor plate can elevate should the water level rises. So in that case, the ground level is something that has been explored in terms of should the water level rise, how can the ground level or the ground floor can sort of rise to remain accessible. So this is a flexible vertical circulation that gets attached. The ground floor sort of gets rises to different landings as water level rises to remain accessible. Water channel gets accumulates water from the roof in different levels into the water collection unit underground. The pier-like entrance allows for boats later on should the water level rise. This is the current condition in a proposed format where landscape has been sort of introduced, where the waterscape is full of clean water, and it's a waterscape that can be interacted with boats and recreational activity, but at the same time, the private and the public, it sort of remains interactable. In monsoon, this is the condition that happens where monsoon emergency barriers are sort of plugged in, which sort of stop water from going into public accessible areas. This is then a study of, this is then coming back to how the proposed condition sort of changes with permanent flooding and seawall rising sea level. If the sea level rises, then the mode of transportation also changes, and boats become primary mode of transportation. And the architecture sort of adapts to the changing lifestyle, where vertical circulation not only acts as a point of circulation, but it acts as a vertical street, but at the same time activates the roof. And the staircases which were previously placed sort of get removed, where this becomes like a free-flowing seascape, waterscape, where complete mode of transportation is boats, and the roads and sky bridges become secondary pedestrian access from an elevated walkway. So this is the entire research that's been done so far.
Thank you. It's great to see the adaptation from the comments last session, and it's it's good to see the project develop even further. Have you thought about my suggestion of making it into a full proposal for
yes,
the
yes. So yes. So right now, I was trying to tweak the graphic because it still felt a little bit more confusing. I'm still sort of trying to refine the graphics to make it more simpler and further get into the details of how this can sort of work in terms of separate interventions, in terms of landscape typologies and housing typologies. As you and Alan also mentioned last time on creating combative and adaptive proposals where both can sort of create like comparative of what happens if certain strategies are sort of applied.
Yeah.
So still ongoing. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, it'll be good to see the data as well to show the volume of the water if you're putting a full proposal, and yeah, it'll be really convincing where you have like two strategy of like adapting or fighting against a monsoon, and how much water you're expecting in volume and what you do in different scenarios. And I think it'll come together really well with all the new graphics that you're doing.
Okay.
What's your ambition? And continuing the discussion about combating and adapting to this situation, because what you propose here can really, I see a spin-off project, right? So like an intention to keep this 1 kilometer permanently flooded. If you do that, like spin off, and then like what you propose here, like already rerouting how they go about their daily life, right? Because you mentioned about this kilometer strip has commercial programs, has some residential apartments. In here, it's like a community. Like in response to adapting to the rising sea level, then this like you propose a new way to keep it permanently flooded, and then that can already like show you like a model how different communities can perhaps, like respond to this situation.
Right.
So that
perhaps.
There will be a different trajectory to your project, right? That really depends on your ambition. And what you propose here, like it's like a story, right? You imagine like maybe in 2030 when we go to Karachi, like what you just say, the mode of transport will be completely different. You travel the city like differently. You experience the city also differently. Maybe it will be more like Amsterdam, right? With all this canal. And then like what this diagram is trying to show is that like, or maybe before that, Mr. and Mrs. Flower needs to deliver flour to that apartments, and then the routes, it used to be like that. But maybe in the permanently flooded community, like the new routes that goes across this. And then like this neighborhood or this community has this new ways of life, right? Like, and then I don't know, maybe you can go deeper and maybe even discuss about the commercial value of this flooded community. That will be a completely different trajectory. And of course, there was the original one. The original one will be, like you create these different conditions, and then like different soft boundaries, and then like different situations. Those are great. And then that can be something productive or useful for conversations with the local government or whoever is in charge of this district. But do you want to maybe discuss about your ambition? Like this is two different trajectories for the project.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of avenues that this research can sort of go to, and like this literally feels like it's still surface level, and there are a lot more detailed research that can happen in different aspects in terms of even how the architectural typology can also adapt to different usage, and at the same time how the landscape sort of also changes.
Because like if you go back to the early, like the first few pages where you have the map showing how the city will be flooded, I mean, that is really like an issue that is beyond any form of governments that can deal with this. Like more than I don't know, looks like 70% of the neighborhood will be underwater. And what you can do, if you take on the adaptation attitude, then you will try to keep certain neighborhoods permanently flooded, right?
Yeah.
And then mode of transportation or how I get from point A to point B will be also different. Then that will be, I guess, that will be what we say a true adapting attitude. That's no longer like taking care. That's no longer taking care of the different conditions with the soft boundary. This is like trying to permanently flood this neighborhood, and then with this hypothesis, then you try to understand how that will change the daily lives of this 1 kilometer strip.
Right.
And then, if you imagine, like, this can be a prototype for you to look at another city where you also try to permanently flood it, and then because they are facing the same issues, like this rising sea level, like more than half of the city will be flooded. That's really little you can do about it, rather than adapting to this new awakening. You have this like different flooded communities popping up in different cities. Then you give a new form of a lifestyle or a new typology for something maybe like coast climate change, urbanism, things like that. It's a big word. It needs a lot of definition, but the idea is to make you think how this will affect the commercial activities, or how your outdoor activities will be. I don't know if I go a bit further. Maybe you can even propose a water park in this community, right? Because you already flood the central area, and then the future parks or open or outdoor spaces will no longer be like the parks we understand as today, but more like a water area where you allow for some activities.
Right.
Yeah. So if you agree with that hypothesis, then you can really like reimagine the life in this area of investigation.
Okay.
Yeah, feel free to jump in, Leyland and Ben and Herman.
I'm not so, like, personally, I'm not so sure about having some sort of leisure activity during a monsoon, but like the permanently flooded, it's a good concept to think that the people would adapt it so well, even during the monsoon, they could enjoy themselves. But it's, I think at the moment it has a lot more to figure out before we get there, like the kind of mechanism where you can remove the ground floor materials and insulations and protections and all that kind of architectural details. It's quite a big jump from there to enjoying the monsoon as like a yearly activity.
Right.
By the way, I've also invited Theo to join this chat. I don't know if he's able to. Any comments for the student project? So Theo also helped in teaching my studio for some of the tutorials.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Theo. Nice to be here. I'm just sort of generally getting sort of familiarized with the process and how you guys have organized this, so we can help a bit more in the future.
Yeah. Cool. If you have any comments on the projects, you can also.
Sorry, I was jumping in and out because I have stuff going on in my, some work in my house.
No worries.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Asifa, I think you see, like Ben has a different idea about this project. Then maybe you can also discuss a bit about how you imagine like you can take this further.
So I think there are multiple layers to this. So let's say if I start, so for example, the flooding is also something that's temporary and permanent, right? So in temporary, flooding is how monsoon happens. So in monsoon, the adaptability is different because the condition is temporary. By the same time, when I talk about sea level rising, that's a permanent condition. So the adaptability is on a different level. So in that condition, the recreation can sort of come in where water parks and long-term changes can be sort of considered. Whereas in monsoon, it's sort of quick interventions and quick adaptations because the change sort of lasts something around like a month to maybe 4 months max, if not 3 months. So how does the mobility get affected, and how can the mobility remain intact or sort of temporarily change is something that that occurs differently in monsoon, right? Because the period of that change is shorter than the permanent change that might occur in later years when the sea level rises. So and then moving on to that, then the interventions that might happen in temporary conditions in terms of landscape interventions is different. And at the same time, in a housing typology, there isn't too many changes in a temporary condition, which is the monsoon. Whereas the rising sea level sort of actually changes the lifestyle, right? Because one also has to adapt to the mode of transport, like a different mode of transportation, which might be through water rather than land, and roads and networks. So there are those. So even in interventions, there are different layers where temporary interventions are sort of more like monsoon emergency barriers, but in a permanent setting, it's more towards allowing the water to become part of living in that condition. So in those terms, I feel, yeah.
So there are two. So for you, this is like more like a stage. For now, you will look after the monsoon conditions, and then in 8 years, 2030, that will be the permanent flooding, right? When this is below sea level, and then let's say 2030, then when the land is below sea level, I think monsoon will also make the water level higher, right? Which means you probably not only give up the first floor, you will probably have to give up the second and third floor. Then
maybe
hollow
because
structure that you propose.
Yeah,
and then
the maximum
and then perhaps
1 meter rise is something that was recorded as the maximum rainwater level change that happened on ground. So even in permanent conditions, the rainwater might rise to, let's say, 1 to 1.5 meters additional as after the sea level rising.
Yeah. So maybe a more critical question is all the components or the elements that you propose to deal with monsoon seasons, are they still relevant in 2030?
So this was So this was something that we had discussed internally also between myself, Paul, and Clark, that maybe the interventions that, because sea level, to think about sea level and its interventions late when sea level rises is something that might be too late to think about it. Then possibly the point of action can be something that occurs right now, where the landscape intervention, the housing typology sort of already allows for that change to happen 10 years later, which is why the proposed condition is in a way that it sort of also facilitates monsoon level rising, which is a bit more temporary, but at the same time, when there are already interventions in terms of seating spaces that are mostly column footings or foundations for columns or supports for elevated walkways and roads to be plugged in when the time comes. At the same time, these stairways that connect the elevated landscape to the road and the waterscape can be removed to sort of eventually become ways for thoroughfares for boats to sort of cross from one end to the other. Whereas in monsoon condition, in temporary conditions, current conditions, this is acting as a barrier between different modes of, like, different areas where between public and private and the modes of transportation. So water and land is sort of separated here. But the interventions are such that they sort of also allow for the permanent changes to occur when the time comes. So this was the entire idea behind it, that the interventions not only cater to something that's temporary in case of monsoon, but it also allows for permanent intervention to happen, for permanent flooding when that occurs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at here, for example, this walkway will be underwater, right, during monsoon.
Yeah.
And then for the permanent, like for the rising sea level, how high does it get? Is that a drawing showing the condition?
Yeah. So so the initial rise is about 1 meter. So if you see this, and this is sort of like, so by 2030, it will be below sea level, which would be about 1 meter. There was limited data available on the levels that might occur. So I had to sort of merge the different data which were sort of available in terms of what amount of land sort of gets submerged if the water level rises by 1 meter, and there was a yearly representation of that. So in terms of the accuracy of the data, that's also something that this is from the climate change website that's online. So in that terms, so from the data that was available, I sort of concluded that the initial rise in the sea level is about 1 meter.
Okay, so the first floor is gone.
Yeah. Which is why in the housing typology, the ground floor is sort of proposed as a double height space. So when the water level does rise, the floor sort of gets elevated. So in this condition, the height of the ground level, the first level, is higher than the levels above. And should the water level rise above 1 meter, let's say 2 meters in terms of the permanent flooding, then the ground level gets completely unusable, and the roof is sort of something that remains usable.
Yeah, I think that's, don't know, I think David wanted to say something, or he dropped off. I can't hear David, but seems like he's.
I can't hear him either.
Yeah, he seems to be talking in the Zoom chat, but.
Oh.
Anyways, yeah, I think that's yeah, like, it's a great project, and it's good to see the development as well. And I think if you can categorize the different scenarios and make it into different proposals against different conditions, and then that will come together really well, and have them as separate chapters, and then at the end like a compare and contrast page where you have the same view for every scenario. So yeah, like a general page saying different strategy, and then against different conditions where you're experiencing. And I think it will be a very powerful proposal.
Right.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Categorizing your solutions and then like clearly labeling like that is your solution to the monsoon and to the permanent flooding. I think that would be quite helpful. I think as you discussed just now, like the accuracy of the rising sea level, it's really important. Because I understand like maybe like climate change will run a simulation, and then because they are not focusing in this area, maybe their pixel is much larger. Maybe the pixel is like 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. That doesn't really accurately predict the area of flooding in the city. And if you can spend a bit of time to understand like the accuracy of the data you're getting, then maybe you will get that can really support your projects here. Like if you can really understand how accurate that is that like really 1 meter, or is that more than 1 meter? I think that can really make it stronger for you. And then as for the different trajectory that I discussed with you today, is really just for you, because I thought that you wasn't really so enthusiastic about making a proposal to the local government, because maybe like you don't believe that's where changes will come. Then perhaps like offering you a new trajectory could make it into something like a powerful narrative to really become like a project to tease out new ideas, like in case of a permanently flooded community, what sort of life you're going to lead.
Right. Yeah, the lack of enthusiasm is because of the way the lack of interest from the government. Even the data that is available in terms of about the city, when we had started researching, it's as out like it's at least the latest updated data that's available is 10 years ago, which is very outdated. So even finding data locally is something of a challenge. So whatever accurate data that I could find from these climate change websites that are actually looking into it was something that I could sort of take on and create a basis on that. So if I mean, I can create the necessary information, and when the government sort of sees and pays interest in it, I can always propose it. But I can keep it ready, and I can sort of keep adding on to that research so that it sort of becomes a proposal of interventions for whoever is interested, because usually it's private or NGOs that sort of start taking up projects such as this.
Understand. I think only you can sort of read into the local political landscape and understand where real changes can come from. Yeah. And yeah, I think, like you say, that would be a huge undertaking to get this data, and then as well as like, yeah, you probably have to imagine a new form of investigation. Perhaps you can take it to your university and then run a studio on that, and then just get different people to help you with that, and then you come up with a methodology to collect data accurately.
Yeah, that can be one way to go about it. Yes, definitely.
So that you get resources to do the necessary tasks, right? Because I imagine like doing it by yourself collecting the data and then also understanding the whole thing about simulating this large scale flooding, that can be quite a challenge. And then the result is also like, because the methodology will really determine the credibility of the result that you are getting. And then that will really enter into a whole different discussion. And then that's something architects are less comfortable with. Yeah. But it's great. It's great. Yeah, I just wonder like how you're still changing the graphics, right? You're still like taking on some of the comments and make it. Yeah. So send us any updates. Yeah.
Yeah, I will. I would. Yeah, I would love to get some feedback on it also, because I feel that I'm still sort of trying to figure it out on how best to represent it. So it would be great if I can sort of get some feedback on it. Yeah. Sure.
Like it can be any form, like it can be email exchange, or it can be like a format like this, like a public presentation, things like that. We can definitely continue the conversation. Because
that would be great.
Yeah, because this is real, right? In 8 years, it's not even that far. 8 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Any comments? Any last comments? How about Leyland? You're still here?
Yeah, I've seen. I was there when this midterm, so the graphics is very nice, and the idea behind it is quite rational. I think you provide all the solutions. I mean, there's a lot of things you cannot just do right ahead, right? So you have this solution come out. It doesn't matter. You should providing ideas for the future. It's like archigrams and like other radical architects, right? So I think you can think more ahead. So right now I think you're standing on like 50 years later. So we imagine this building or this type of solution will achieve in 50 years, and it depends on like the technologies and the societies. And then you can imagine something further, like after 50 years, what can you do? What this project like materializations and the traffics. So it's totally different from what we have right now. So maybe we have like cars and boats, and what you can imagine in 50 years later, and what can come out in technology, what steel industry will come out, what other like what technology you can just imagine together with the project that you're preparing for the 50 years later. So to design for the future, or to research and find solution for what we have right now, it's nice. You need to prepare for what can make your project timeless, right? So you after 50 years, define your project and see, whoa, this is super nice. And however, you have very like very like outdated like building methods, and this is something also you can think along with. Okay, nice.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Great project. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, because you are dealing with situation that is going to change how we go about our daily lives, and then like skipping ahead or fast forward and imagine certain technology or certain solution of the future can really create new ideas, I think, because you are changing your frame of reference. You are no longer dealing with all the reality, a lot of the difficulties that we cannot overcome with our current resources. But by skipping ahead, like what Leyland say, that then can also maybe free us from the burden of reality and then allow us to really see it with new ideas. Yeah, I think I agree. Like, because of this, the situation you have identified here, and then some audience will really like looking forward to see if you have any new ideas to discuss about this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't leave yet. I think we have some quick updates that we want to show you, and I also checked with Duha if she wants to come back so that we can also update it on. So